Archaeologists in Britain say they've made an astonishing find. They believe they've uncovered the remains of long-lost royalty. He happens to be King Richard III.
A cold case 5 centuries old. 2 children, heirs to the throne, vanish without a trace. The suspect, their power-hungry uncle. It's the perfect story, maybe too perfect. Scientists have just reopened the case, led by the very woman who found King Richard's body.
It's the first ever search for the grave of an anointed king, so to find him, it would be fantastic, really fantastic.
And her new findings are explosive. She claims to have solved the mystery of the princes in the tower. But the solution isn't a happy ending. It's a discovery that's somehow worse than the tale we always knew. The historian who found a king. In 2012, the world was stunned. Archaeologists digging beneath a boring city parking lot in Leicester, England, found something that nobody thought was possible. Underneath a spot crudely marked with a painted R, they found the skeleton of a man. This wasn't just any man. The bones showed he had suffered from severe scoliosis, a curved spine, exactly matching the rumors about King Richard III. He had also suffered brutal, fatal wounds, including a massive blow to the back of the skull that sliced off a piece of bone and another blade thrust up through the jaw. These wounds were a perfect match for the descriptions of his passing at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. After more than 500 years, the lost king had been found. The woman at the center of this incredible discovery was historian Philippa Langley. She had spent years chasing this impossible theory, and she was proven right. You see, finding Richard's body solved one of history's greatest missing person cases. But for Langley, it just opened the door to an even bigger one. It pushed her to ask, if history was wrong about where Richard was buried, what else was it wrong about? And that led her straight to the darkest mystery of all, the princes in the tower. The story we all know is chilling. In 1483, King Edward IV passed away, leaving his 12-year-old son, Edward V, as the new king. But before the boy could be crowned, his uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, took control. He placed young Edward and his 9-year-old brother, Richard, Duke of York, into the Tower of London, supposedly for their protection. Then Parliament declared the boys illegitimate. Richard of Gloucester was crowned King Richard III. And within weeks, the 2 princes vanished from sight. They were never seen again. The conclusion was instant and brutal. Richard III, to secure his throne, had ordered the elimination of his own nephews. This story was cemented by Tudor historians and most famously by William Shakespeare, who painted Richard as a deformed and monstrous villain. But here's where the story gets crazy. Philippa Langley, fresh off her world-changing discovery, launched a new investigation called the Missing Princes Project. She and a team of hundreds of researchers began digging, not in the ground, but in the dusty, forgotten archives of Europe. What they found threatens to turn history on its head. They uncovered a paper trail. Receipts, letters, and secret contracts that they claim prove the princes were not eliminated in the tower. Langley's new evidence suggests Richard III was not the monster history claims he was. In fact, he may have been their savior. So what did happen to the boys? And why is this new solution worse than the story we were told? The answer involves a vast conspiracy, a secret exile, and a cold-blooded cover-up at the heart of England's most celebrated royal dynasty. This new evidence solves the mystery, and it is far worse than we knew. A clue 4 years too late. What many overlooked for centuries is that the evidence for the prince's elimination is entirely circumstantial. There were no remains, no witnesses, and no confession. The entire case rested on rumors spread by Richard's enemies after he was defeated. Langley's team decided to ignore the Tudor-era stories and look for fresh evidence untouched by English propaganda in the archives of mainland Europe. And they hit a jackpot. The first clue was found in Lille, northern France. It was a simple financial document, a receipt from the year 1487. That date is crucial. This is a full 4 years after the princes supposedly vanished. The receipt, tucked away in a stack of 15th century accounts, records a payment for weapons, specifically long pikes. but it was who the weapons were for that stopped researchers in their tracks. The document states the weapons were for the son of King Edward. To put it mildly, this is a historical grenade. In 1487, the only known legitimate son of King Edward was supposedly 12-year-old Edward V, who was believed to be long gone. This receipt wasn't just a casual note, it was an official record of European powers, specifically Margaret of Burgundy, the prince's own aunt, arming a young man they believed to be the rightful king of England. This document fits perfectly with a major event from that same year, the Lambert-Simnel Rebellion. History tells us this was an uprising led by a young boy, Lambert Simnel, who was pretending to be a different Yorkist heir. But Langley suggests this new document complicates that story. What if the Continental supporters backing the rebellion truly believed they were funding the real King Edward V, fighting to reclaim his throne? But the clues about the elder prince don't stop there. Another, even more personal item surfaced in the National Archives in London. It was a will from 1516, written by a woman named Lady Margaret Capel. The thing nobody tells you is who she was connected to. Her half-sister was married to Sir James Tyrrell. That name is infamous. Sir James Tyrrell is the man Tudor historian Sir Thomas More specifically named as the person Richard III ordered to carry out the horrible act. In her will, Lady Capel leaves an item to her son. The will reads, "I bequeath to my son his father's chain, which was young King Edward V's." This is a wow factor moment. Why, decades after the prince's disappearance, would the family of the alleged eliminator be casually passing down the prince's personal, valuable gold chain as a family heirloom? Langley argues this makes no sense if Tyrrell was the eliminator. An executioner doesn't keep a trophy and then give it to his wife's family. But it does make sense if Sir James Tyrrell wasn't the executioner. What if he was the rescuer? What if Richard III ordered Tyrrell to secretly get the boys out of the tower and smuggle them to safety? The chain would have been a gift, a keepsake from the prince he protected. The fate of the older prince was shocking. The younger princes, even worse. The Dresden Contract. The evidence for the older prince, Edward, suggests he survived and may have perished in battle in 1487. But what about his younger brother, Richard, Duke of York? This is where the story gets truly unbelievable. Langley's team uncovered a document in Gelderland in the Netherlands that seems to be the prince's own voice. It's a manuscript from the late 15th century, written in Middle Dutch, that claims to be a first-person account from Richard, Duke of York himself. The text describes his life after the tower. It claims he was secretly removed from his prison by two men loyal to his uncle, Richard III. It says he was taken out of England under a fake identity, spirited through France and Portugal, and eventually found safety with his aunt, Margaret of Burgundy. If this document is genuine, the implications are monumental, because this timeline perfectly matches the story of one of history's most famous pretenders, a man named Perkin Warbeck. You see, in the 1490s, this young, charismatic man named Perkin Warbeck appeared in Ireland, claiming to be Richard, Duke of York. The new king, Henry VII, the first Tudor, laughed him off as an impostor, a simple boy from Tournai. But the thing is, European rulers did not treat him like an impostor. Langley's team found even more documents to back this up. In Austria, they found a record of a meeting between this man and the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I. The document says Richard proved his identity by showing the emperor three specific physical marks on his body, one near his eye, one on his mouth, and one on his thigh. This wasn't a vague claim, it was a specific physical identification. But the most incredible piece of evidence comes from Dresden, Germany. It's a formal legal contract dated 1493. In this document, Richard of England promises to pay Duke Albert of Saxony 30,000 florins in return for military backing to invade England and take his throne. And attached to this contract is a stunningly crafted seal with the full royal arms of England and a confident, clear signature. Richard of England. This is not the work of some poor runaway. This is a man being recognized as a king by the most powerful people in the world. Langley's team had the parchment, ink, and handwriting analyzed. It is all authentically from the late 15th century. Let's be clear. Perkin Warbeck, the man history dismissed as a fake, was signing international treaties as the King of England, using a royal seal and being funded by emperors. Why would they risk so much for a fraud? Langley's new evidence provides a chilling answer. They backed him because he wasn't a fraud. They believed he was the real Richard, Duke of York, who had escaped the Tower. This evidence paints a new picture. But what does it all mean? The worst truth. So let's put this all together. Philippa Langley's team has presented a new timeline that, if true, solves the 500-year-old mystery. In 1483, King Richard III, facing threats from his political enemies, did not eliminate his nephews. Instead, he saw them as a liability and a target. He ordered a loyal knight, possibly Sir James Tyrrell, to smuggle the boys out of the Tower and into secrecy in Europe, under the protection of their aunt Margaret of Burgundy. The world was allowed to think they had vanished. The elder prince, Edward V, grew up in exile. In 1487, backed by his aunt, as the Lille receipt shows, he tried to reclaim his throne. He was the real leader of the Lambert-Simnel rebellion, but he failed. He was likely defeated and perished at the Battle of Stoke Field, his true identity never revealed by the winning side. A few years later, the younger prince, Richard, Duke of York, came of age. This is the man history calls Perkin Warbeck. Backed by the kings of Europe, as the Dresden contract shows, he launched his own attempt to take back the throne. And here is where the story becomes worse than history told us. The original story is a simple, grim fairy tale. A monstrous uncle eliminates his nephews. It's a tragedy, but it's contained. The new story is a dark, sprawling political conspiracy. It means that Richard III was innocent, and it means that the man who defeated him, Henry VII, the founder of the celebrated Tudor dynasty, the father of Henry VIII and grandfather of Queen Elizabeth I, was the real villain. Think about it. If Langley is right, Henry VII knew Perkin Warbeck was the genuine Richard, Duke of York. He captured the true heir to the throne, paraded him through the streets as a pretender to humiliate him, and then after a few years had him systematically eliminated in 1499. This wasn't an act of passion. It was a cold, calculated cleansing of the bloodline to protect his own stolen crown. He didn't just defeat his rival, he erased him from history, branding him an imposter for all time. That is a far colder and worse truth than the one Shakespeare told. The thing is, not everyone is convinced. Historians like Tracy Borman and David Pilling argue that Langley's evidence is still circumstantial. They say rulers always backed pretenders, real or fake, just to cause trouble for their enemies. They argue the Gelderland manuscript is just propaganda created for Warbeck, and the Lille receipt is too vague. But this brings us to the final looming question. People watching this are probably wondering, are we missing a key detail? What about the two small skeletons found under a staircase in the Tower of London in 1674? Those remains, discovered hidden beneath a staircase in the Tower of London, were long assumed to be the two lost princes. They were quickly and quietly moved, eventually buried in Westminster Abbey, a symbolic end to a dark and mysterious chapter. But that's all it was, an assumption, a story that served the new regime. Today, we have the technology to end the debate. We can finally cut through centuries of rumor, propaganda, and speculation. A definitive answer is sitting right there within our grasp. Modern DNA testing could solve this 500-year-old cold case in an instant. The key, ironically, was the discovery of their alleged murderer. We have verified DNA taken from Richard III's remains found under a car park in Leicester. We could simply compare the genetic material from the bones in that Abbey urn to Richard's own DNA. We could know for sure if those are his nephews. So why haven't we? The stakes are almost too high. If the bones are the prince's, the test would prove the classic Tudor story was right all along. It would confirm that Richard III was the monster history wrote him to be. So what do you think? Was Richard III a savior? And does the Tudor dynasty rest on a lie? Let us know below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.